my name is Palma Accardi, and you are watching Tidal Flooding Talk. Before we get started, I just wanted to wish all the fathers and father figures out there a happy Father's Day, including my dad if he's watching, and of course Dan Skeldon on his first Father's Day as a father.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Happy Father's Day to my dad in Rhode Island, Amanda's dad in South Jersey, Amanda's stepdad in South Jersey, and all dads out there. Holiday edition coming to you. A couple technical difficulties, not thunderstorm related. We are tracking a couple of good thunderstorms up towards Philly. They're not interfering with our broadcast, but hopefully those issues are now worked out. So let us know if you can hear us and see us correctly. And feel free, of course, to ask questions, post comments, or just listen in. This week's guest, always try to bring a different guest. Sometimes we welcome back, popular ones. Sam could be one of those ones we welcome back in the future as a popular guest. Sam Lashman, attorney at law. Sam, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Dan.
Hi, Sam.
Palma, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
So, Sam, as a first-time guest, just tell us a little bit about yourself as a lifelong South Jerseyan, right?
I am a lifelong South Jerseyan and a resident of Absecon Island, except when I was in school. I've lived on the island my whole life.
So, as a lifelong resident, I always like to ask lifelong residents this. What's your most memorable weather event? I'm not going to date you. I'm not going to ask you when you were born or whatnot, but we could probably figure it out based on your answer, I guess.
No question that Sandy is the most memorable. There were a few snowstorms, but Sandy definitely was the biggest that I lived through.
All right, and did you stay on the island for Sandy, or because we were under an emergency and mandatory evacuation, of course you got off, right?
I was one of the bad people that stayed.
Okay. Well, there were a lot of you. You weren't the only one,
and what happened was, because the year before the island was closed, I left during Irene, and I learned the lesson that if you leave, you won't be able to come back. So in this event, I wanted to stay to think that there would be something that I could possibly do to save my property if it became flooded. And afterwards I learned there would have been nothing. I didn't have any flood damage, but seeing everything that happened, I did learn the lesson that there would have been nothing that I could have done.
So will you leave if there's another storm?
Again, it depends on the magnitude of the projection. We were talking about the difference between minor, moderate, and major flooding, which to me is confusing. But if I know that there is a Sandy event, I won't stay. There's nothing that I can do, and I won't stay.
How do you think we convey, because meteorologists and emergency managers and a lot of the past guests we've had on the show, one of our challenges is, we got to get the forecast right. We don't always get it right. With Irene, the storm you mentioned before Sandy, wasn't as bad as thought. A lot of people heeded the warning and said, hey, wait a second. Number one, it wasn't as bad. Number two, we had troubles getting back on the island, so we're not going to leave the next time. Sandy, the forecast was spot on. We knew it was going to be bad, yet people don't listen to us. So how do you correct that? Like, as a resident, as a coastal resident, what's the best advice you can give to us that, oh, wow, that resonates with me. I'm going to leave next time.
The best advice that would encourage people like me would be to say that the residents will be allowed back after the emergency is over.
Right.
The other thing is to say, instead of minor or moderate flooding, give an actual foot estimate. I know now through experience when it gets to 8 or 9 feet, and it doesn't have to be on the dot, but I know exactly what level of flooding that my property can sustain. And the streets that I'm traveling on, where I used to live before, I was talking to Palma before, I bought my house because I used to have minor flooding at the location that I was at before, and I would have to move my car, and I did have flood damage. Every storm I would have to watch and move my car. And before I bought the house that I'm in now, I waited for a rainstorm, and then I drove around to the properties that I was looking at to see is this a high enough street or not?
That's background research. For
Not
you right
everybody
there.
can do that,
Right.
but I was able to do it, and the house I bought was not flooding at the storm that I went around doing my research at. And it did help me later on because I did not have any damage at Sandy.
Has it ever flooded?
To my knowledge, my house hasn't.
Okay. So you might be one of the high points of the
I
island.
think I'm one of the high points, definitely the highest, or the second highest on my street. There's a little hill, and I was lucky, and other people were not lucky, and after the storm was over, I did see the devastation, and I know with the other areas that are going through now in the Midwest, the flooding, I have a lot of sympathy for that. But I think a foot level forecast is better than the minor, moderate, or major.
Especially if people have their elevation certificate,
Right.
which
If
is
you
something
know
we
where
always
your
talk
grade is, your elevation of your property, then you might be able to understand a foot forecast like that, flooding up to
Right.
7 feet. But if you don't, then I don't know, maybe minor, moderate, major would be more helpful to the people that don't have that.
For routine flooding, I think that's good, but for a big storm, I definitely would like to know the exact number, even though it doesn't have to be on the dot. But I remember somebody asking me afterwards, you had 6 feet of flooding, and I was standing on the street. They figured, well, were you in over your head? And I was trying to explain to them, by the time you get to the street level, you're already a few feet higher than zero elevation, and that explains some of the, I guess, confusion. But even with minor flooding, most people know, and when I grew up, we knew the streets that would flood.
about. Right.
And now we know the streets that will flood in a major storm.
And I think that's why I always try to put a positive spin on Sandy or Jonas if you're in Cape May County, which was a bad nor'easter, because nor'easters can be bad too. And one of the good things that comes out of those storms is we get to use it as a modern measuring stick now. So we can tell residents like you, all right, this hurricane is going to be 3 inches below Sandy or 5 inches above Sandy. So that's, everyone knows what Sandy did as far as water in their house. So that's a measuring stick that we didn't have before Sandy, because we really didn't have, thankfully, a really bad storm for a little while.
I think the feet, the elevation, the flood projection in feet, but the minor ones, definitely I would stick to the minor flooding because people have cars that flood all the time. The major ones, I think you have to tell people the expected.
And that's one thing the National Weather Service does now. When they issue coastal flood warnings, they will actually say moderate flooding is expected. We expect the tide to get to 7.3 feet in Atlantic City. That is very comparable to the January nor'easter of 2016. So they're kind of doing all three now, which you suggested. They're doing minor, moderate, major. They're giving a level, and they're giving a recent storm that it may compare to. So they want to kind of communicate whatever resonates with each person. I mean, some people might like the minor, moderate, major. Some may like the elevation. Some may like what was it like to me. And they give all three in the statements now, which I think kind of covers all bases.
Dan, do you have a preference, or?
I kind of agree with Sam in that minor, moderate, major is very good, for giving, all right, how bad is it going to be? But when it's major, how major is it going to be? Because major starts at 8 feet in Atlantic City. 8 feet is a lot different than 9 feet, which is a lot different than 10, which I don't think we've seen. So how far into major are we talking? That's the thing, because major is the worst. I do like minor, moderate, major, but I think when you get really bad, it's nice to know how it compares to Sandy, how it compares to Jonas, how it compares to the 44 hurricane. Do you remember that one? Or
I wasn't around for the 44.
We're getting there, Dan.
Yeah, I
We're
did
gonna
hear
figure this one out.
I did hear stories about the 62, and I was about a year and a half old then.
You were. Okay, all right, so there you go. So you gave it away there. And the 62 storm reminds residents that it's not just hurricanes, it's nor'easters too. It's
And
a year-round
when
threat.
when I was a kid, we would have storms, but we didn't have this good weather forecasting. And you would have a storm, you'd know a storm was coming, and then the next day you would find out how bad it was.
Right.
Or you could go down Ventnor Avenue and see trees tipped over. But now forecasting was a lot better.
Right.
Now, you are also an attorney.
Yes.
So how did Superstorm Sandy or other coastal storms impact or influence your career as an attorney?
The biggest thing I think is when I advise people what to do when they buy a house. Everybody today is looking for a 10 to 12 foot elevation on their house, minimum. The other thing is problems with home elevation companies. I don't want to disparage any companies, but I do know some stories that people have told me or called me up about. They've had problems with their elevation contractors, and the best advice I give in general is to keep retainage until the job is done, so that the contractor will come back and do the job and finish it up. There were some other things people have had problems with, change orders, things like that, which is a general construction type of contract issue. But the main issues that people have had are whether to elevate their house, which is a financial decision. We were talking about that, and it's funny that here in this area the land values are higher than the building costs. Which,
Sometimes dramatically,
yeah,
right?
and depending on the square footage, it might not pay to elevate your house because the land is worth so much more. And when I had an insurance bill, for an example, I would get an automatic escalation, and they didn't understand that the land here is worth more. I didn't need the automatic escalation because the house value, the building value, was not as high. So that amount of escalation didn't give me a benefit.
Now, because your house is not, I'm just making a presumption here, not in a zone that historically floods, have you not had to consider elevating, or are you already pretty high up?
I did have to consider elevating because everybody that is on the island had to look at it.
Okay. And what was the outcome of that?
For me,
process?
it wouldn't pay for the
Okay.
square footage of my house. And let's say what I talk about to people is maybe there's a rough estimate of $150 a square foot to $175 a square foot for building. My house is small enough that it doesn't pay, but if I had a larger house, I might have. But the land value, again, really would tend towards just tearing it down and building completely new rather than raising a house at a lower square footage value.
Now, are you a shore resident for life? You know, born, raised. I mean, like, would you ever consider moving on the mainland for a change of pace? I don't have to worry about flooding anymore, or is it just, you know what, flooding's part of island life, and if you're prepared, you're prepared. I mean, are you going to be Margate or Absecon Island resident till the end?
I expect to always live on the island, but if I left, it wouldn't be because of flooding. I could handle the flooding.
No.
It would depend on what I need as a homeowner.
Right. Okay. Another question for you too is, you said, and I admire your research where you drive around, you see which streets that flood. I mean, that's being very
Not
very
everybody
thorough.
can do
Not
that.
everyone can do
And
that.
this was before Sandy, right?
Right.
That you drove around, so it was on your mind.
This was over 10 years before Sandy. Not everybody can do that, but you have to have a flood elevation certificate. I don't even think you can buy a house with a mortgage without having a flood elevation certificate today. And I don't think you could have for the past 20 years. So that's not really new.
I think it's, and I always say this is another popular question as well. I mean, we're in summer season now. Locals more than tourists, just because they live here year round, know what streets flood. While tidal flooding is not that common in the summer, it does happen with full moons and on new moons and onshore winds or tropical systems, or more often just heavy thunderstorms flooding streets. What's the best way, do you think, we educate tourists of this? Because, they're just as susceptible to lose their cars, especially since they don't know what streets flood. Is there a way we can better educate them?
I don't know if there is, because I see vacationers, second homeowners come in, and they're really not experienced in it. And I've heard stories, people call in radio shows, and they're a little bit surprised when it comes to their doorstep. But I do expect people to know the street that they live on, if it tends to flood or not. So I would assume that they know if they're going to have potential car flooding issue, they would have to move their car.
And it could be an instance where locals help tourists, where if you lived on a flooded street, thankfully you don't, you can say, hey, you want to move your car tonight, there's flooding. It could be a good neighbor helping a good neighbor, and a local helping a tourist.
Most people that are second homeowners, I think, get the word either by their neighbors, word of mouth, radio, or whatever, that there's a big storm coming, and they're usually not here for the big events. So I guess the word has gotten out to that extent.
Okay.
Now, before the show, we were discussing how you were active in helping create the Coastal Coalition, or at least you're around for it. Could you tell us what that was like right after Superstorm Sandy?
Mayor Bagnell, Tom Quirk, and some other people, local officials, when the storm hit and the aftermath, obviously the flood maps were under revision. That became a big topic about how the new maps would be developed and what could local residents and FEMA do, and how would that affect the future rates. And that was the genesis of the Coastal Coalition. And the maps, I think, are really just going into effect now. I'm seeing it with my insurance rates. Even though I'm a year-round resident, the rates are starting to increase, and all the new construction is at a higher level. They're at actually 12 to 14 feet to get better rates. So we're seeing that. I'm lucky that the house that I live in, the street that I live in, does get flooded, and it would in the future, but my house wouldn't. But you would have to know, based on, you have to do research on your house location if you're going to buy a house in this location.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You were mentioning that a lot of your clients have said, I want my house to be at least 10 feet off the ground. So do you think people are a lot more aware than they used to be?
They're definitely more aware.
That their house should be up higher?
They're definitely more aware.
And I noticed one thing too, you said with the repopulating after a storm, that's something they've worked on as well. Because I remember after Irene and Sandy, governor wanted to do it by county, but sometimes the southern end of the county was ready, the northern end was. So I do think they learn from each storm. And it's really tough to, the state of New Jersey and our local and county emergency managers, they have drills, they practice, but until you get the real thing,
it was a tough situation. I think at the time they did the right thing, but because of unforeseen circumstances, we couldn't get back on Absecon Island.
I think it was like a sewer plant issue or something.
Ventnor had
so Ventnor and Margate had to wait longer than most people, I believe, right?
And Margate would have been okay, but Ventnor wasn't, and the island as a whole, even Atlantic City.
Yeah.
But by Friday, everybody had to open
and that's something we've learned in the process, the evacuation process, and every storm teaches us something, which I think is all you can ask for is you don't make the same mistakes and you do better the next time. Even though we hope the next time isn't for a long, long time, it could be this year. So we always have to prepare.
I think if people knew that the residents would be able to get back on. That would encourage them to leave. If you just had to show your driver's license and
Yes.
showed that you were a local resident, you're visiting your property, that would go a long way to make it easy for people to leave and feel secure when they
Well,
left.
we've had first responders on here, we've had emergency management officials, and they've all said that from Superstorm Sandy, they've learned so much and they're more prepared the next time around.
Right, and I mean, they can't allow people on until the island is safe. I mean, until there's no gas leaking, until, streets are generally clear. But no, people should be allowed. I mean, they're anxious. They want to go home to see what,
Once it's safe.
once it's safe, they want to see what's left, or hopefully their home is intact, and they want to come back to good news, and they don't want to fret on the mainland on the other side of the bridge waiting until they can go back. So I know that was a big point. I know pets was a point with evacuating, and they've addressed that. So again, hopefully we don't have another storm for a long, long time, but if we do, I think we're more ready. And I know that if we have another Sandy or worse, you will not be on the island
I won't be.
to witness it.
But
this
I
time.
do want to say one thing. I know we're getting to the end. The Coastal Coalition has been a big help in helping local cities keep their flood insurance rates low and getting discounts.
As much as
And
35%.
I do see that on my insurance bill, and some of that is thanks to the Coastal Coalition.
And that's one of the purposes of Tidal Flooding Talk is outreach. We do these weekly shows. It's been, I think, like a year and 5 months, and
Started in February last year.
right. And I mean, outside of a week here or there for a holiday, it's a continuous show that is meant to address these issues. Coastal Coalition put up the Seattle City webcam, which you can see online for flooding. Now, thankfully, since we put up the camera, we haven't had much flooding, which is a good thing. But hopefully, there's more of these cameras coming soon.
But you could still check the camera.
You can,
to
and you
see
can
if
see.
it is flooding.
And the point of these cameras are they are in hot spots. So when Margate puts up a camera, it will not be in front of Sam's house, and Sam's in a favorable zone. But it will go in an area that normally floods. And I think all shore towns should have this. I know Seattle City has the lights now that let people know when flooding's coming. Just the education and the awareness, and that's one of the big things of the Coastal Coalition, which I thank you for bringing up, Sam.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to advise your fellow coastal residents, or even as an attorney, what recommendations you would have to other people that live or visit here?
Well, the visitors, I think, should be more aware of the situation, but they do seem to be gone before the big events.
And it is too. Like you're on vacation. The last thing you want to worry about is, all right, where should I park? What type of weather's coming? I mean, and when I go on vacation, I just want to disconnect. So I mean, they're not at fault, but it's also nice to have them a little more educated.
They don't
too.
have the access to the local
Right.
stations or know
Right.
what's going to happen.
Right. Krista Kaiser, I appreciate you saying, number one, Happy Father's Day. Number two, alerting us to our audio issues at the beginning.
Yeah, that
and I
helps
know
us right off the
you're
bat.
such a regular fan and viewer, so appreciate it. Roberta Bonds, Don Mason, thanks for the Father's Day wishes. Don Mason, any bad storms hitting the Jersey Shore tonight? I will say that there are a couple storms up toward, these are not tidal flooding related storms, but they're thunderstorms that can produce a little poor drainage flooding. They're up in, they were up in the Philly area at the start of the show, and they're going to skirt through a weekend as they work their way towards the shore north of Atlantic City. But I will say thunderstorms are a fixture in the forecast every day this week, and Monday night and Tuesday night there could be some heavier storms. So just be wary of that. It is summer officially on Friday. Friday at 11:54 a.m., your summer solstice, where Palma will be. It will be 8:54 a.m.
Yep.
I'm not going to say the specific location, but she'll be on vacation, so she gets it at
California's a
8:54.
big state.
Okay, all right, 8:54 a.m. I will be co-hosting alone, so I guess just hosting next week with Summers Point Mayor Jack Glasser. He will be a first-time guest as well, like Sam. So Sam Lashman, attorney, has been our great guest this week. Lori Crouch, thanks for the Father's Day wishes as well. Did you get to? Is your father local?
Yeah, my dad's right in Ventnor, so.
Okay. All right, and I know I didn't get to see my dad in Rhode Island, but I get to spend a nice big cookout with Amanda's whole family, and Amanda spoiled me with gifts and a wonderful cookout, and Kenzie was great as well, and got me a personalized book with her pictures, and it almost made me cry. So thank Kenzie and Amanda's family, Steve Michaels likewise, and Leon Benson, Linny Mann. Thank to you as well. Leon says houses in flood areas down there, Ventnor, Margate, Longport. Has to be 15 feet now to get regular flood insurance. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at $30,000 a year. Do you know that?
I think that's a little higher than usual.
Okay.
30,000.
Okay. But Leon, appreciate you watching every week as well.
But over the course of your ownership,
Yeah,
you will be
that's
paying
true.
a substantial expense.
Ethel Fiamingo, nice to have you on. Thanks for the Father's Day wishes. Donald Durant Yoder, you as well. Michael Baker, it's going to be a long week, absolutely, with rain chances every day. I mean, it's a typical forecast. It won't rain every day, but when it rains, it can rain hard. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I think it breaks by next Saturday. I'll get Palma, California forecast too before she leaves.
Hopefully, my flight isn't delayed.
Right. And anything else? I think we covered everything. So we have our next week's guest. It will just be me and Jack Lesser. I think Kenzie may be with me to co-host next week. Try to fill your shoes.
Take my place?
Yes.
Okay.
Sam, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thanks, Dan.
being here as a
Thanks for
first-time guest. We hope to have you back.
And of course, we'll
Sam
leave
knows
you
what's
with
coming as a regular watcher.
Thank you.
an Irish Puff t-shirt.
Thank you.
It's one of my favorite ones. I like that one.
That's the one I got too. When I was a guest.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. We have to get Palma a t-shirt now too. All right, guys. Thanks so much for being here. Palma will see you in 2 weeks. I will see you next week on Tidal Flooding Talk. So thanks for joining us and have a happy Father's Day.
Good night.